Oh, I'm sorry. I was pretending to be the presidential candidate and the likely candidate to win the presidency. I am mining investor and editor of Resource Stock Digest, Gerardo Del Real, here with my partner, Mr. Nick Hodge, who's also an investor and, of course, the publisher of Daily Profit Cycle. This is the 289th episode of our weekly therapy session that we call Investing in Bizarro World. We're going to talk markets. We're going to talk what we're investing in, the trends, the trajectories, the patterns, some technicals from the chartist amongst us, Mr. Nick Hodge. We're going to talk about dancing presidential candidates and word salad presidential candidates, among other things. We're also going to talk uranium for sure. Big week in the uranium space. Before we get to all that, Mr. Hodge, how are you?
I'm doing really well, Gerardo. This is better than therapy because it's free, at least for us, but maybe not for you, the viewer, for much longer. I didn't know what you were doing there at the beginning. There's so much social, presidential, geopolitical, etc. bizarroness going on that I wasn't sure about the dancing candidates. Oh, you know what? I did see, I guess, President Trump dancing at his rally the other day. Enlighten the people.
Well, I'll provide the context. The context was, he was at this forum, and the forum is designed because we're 19 days away from electing the next president of, the United States, the world leader in all things, according to us anyhow. And it was supposed to be a rigorous showing for him. It was meant to really, ask him some of the tough questions. And instead, it turned into them asking him 3 questions and then him saying, Jason, start the music. Jason is the DJ, I imagine, right? So they start the music, and then he stood there and he danced for like 33 minutes. And then he said, well, guys, you want to ask one more question? And then they asked him another question. And he said, oh, hold on. My favorite song. It's the best song. You have to listen to it. And he played that. And then he's like, but have you heard it live? You have to hear it live. It sounds even better. Jason, that's what that was. So this is what the quality of the campaigning that's going on 19 days before the election. From the person in the polls, the last time I checked, is ahead a little bit, right? Depends on the poll that you believe, too, because there's, Nate Silver's got it as almost a dead heat, a 3-point differential. There's other groups that, backed by Elon and a lot of the friendlies on the right, that have him winning in a landslide. So even that is hard to know who to believe, right? So that's the one side of things. And then, the other side of things is Kamala Harris going on Fox with Bret Baier. And kudos to her for walking into the lion's den, because if you're a Democrat and you're even close to maybe pulling off the presidential race, you know what you're walking into. And so, there was the usual word salad there, but there was some stuff that had good substance to it. I definitely learned more about where she stands, at least on certain things, from her than I did watching him dance. So again, as a passionate and proud American, I hope that these last 19 days give us a little bit more substance, man. Pretty please. Like, to Donald's credit, he did have a follow-up town hall meeting. And the people asked some really good questions, man. The quality of questions there were top notch. And again,
funny how people ask better questions than journalists, isn't it?
Absolutely. There was a gentleman that asked about, Mr. Trump's involvement with January the 6th and how culpable he felt. And, the response at one point, he said, that was a day full of love. And I'm sitting here going, without being partisan, just, we all saw it, right? You could call that day whatever you want. You could debate about whether it was all his fault, partially his fault, if he delayed the reaction from the authorities, we could argue that to the sky is blue, and depending on which side of the aisle you sit on, you're going to have a different take, right? If you're not objective about it. What we can't, I'm going to curse out, y'all. What we can't fucking argue about 19 days before we elect the next president of the United States is that was a day of love. But who the fuck are you talking to? Like, yeah, again, I hope I get more out of these last 19 days than we've gotten thus far.
And I do both sides. So, they're talking to the same people. They were telling that, Joe Biden was vibrant and with it. I mean, those are the same people they're talking to. The people who eat that shit up, right? The partisans. I mean, I don't take either of those things, right? In fact,
Same.
I've already voted. We have mail-in voting in Washington. I've already voted and sent it in. I vote no on all the new proposed taxes. I vote yes to repeal the taxes that are on the ballot, and I signed it and I mailed it in. I skipped over the presidential race for sure because there's nothing of substance there. So I didn't watch the interview. I didn't see the thing about the dancing. I maybe saw a tweet or something about it, but. Yeah, I haven't heard anybody talk about the debt or the deficit or any of the things that really hit home to me, right? I'm not even sure what Kamala's main message is. Probably something about the inclusion and forward and togetherness. And Trump is basically could be distilled into tariffs is the word I've heard him say the most. So I'm not really sure what either of them are running on. And I guess let me say this. We had a gentleman write in, a reader that says you guys talk about some of this stuff a lot. And yeah, we've been talking about this for a long time. I mean, I founded the thing called the Outsider Club 10 years ago on some of these themes, right? He asked, well, what are your solutions or what are you going to do about it? I think some of those are pretty clear cut. And, we're a free podcast here. We're not, this isn't Congress. This isn't Capitol Hill. So look, man, you want to enact some term limits. You want to overturn Citizens United. You want to back the dollar with gold. We'd get some of these problems cleared up. Gerardo Del Real in Austin, Texas, and Nick Hodge in Spokane, Washington, as vociferous as they might be, aren't in a position to do that. And when people, at least over the past decade, have come forward with some of those ideas, they are quickly eradicated from the mainstream. And so, those solutions that we do talk about, that we mentioned what they are, they will come to pass over time, but it's not going to be from one Miss Harris or one Mr. Trump. And so anyway, you were mentioning the polls, which I don't pay a lot of attention to. You mentioned Nate Silver, who I've talked about his recent book recently, but who also botched the 2016 presidential polling, but with saying Hillary was essentially going to win. And this mirrors that to me. And so I look at the betting markets, which and like stocks and equities and commodities this week, Mr. Trump had a really good week on the chart. As I look at it, he is 61% favorite to win the presidential election. Miss Kamala Harris, 39%. That is now with $2 billion on the line. True. So what did I tweet the other day? That's hard dollars, not hot air.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Let's hope we get better substance, folks. I will say this to your point, Mr. Hodge, and then we can talk markets. There's a lot of exciting stuff to get to in the markets, but I will say this. You talked about how when people have been able to step up and are able to finance their own campaigns and are able to propose ideas, concrete ideas to reduce the debt, right? We have 35 trillion and over 100 trillion in foreseeable debt that is just mathematically impossible to pay off. It's just not going to happen, right? We have a lot of real issues. We have two parties that haven't proposed or haven't passed a comprehensive immigration bill since Ronald Reagan, right? And so you can talk about open borders, you can talk about A, B, C, and D. When the Republicans put up a plan earlier this year and Democrats agreed to it, it was going to be a bipartisan bill that had a lot of good provisions in there for people to be able to migrate legally and contribute to this beautiful society we're trying to enhance, right? Legally, which makes it safer for all Americans and also makes it safer for the people that are coming over because now they don't have to do it illegally because there's a legal mechanism by which they can come into this country and contribute. That was shot down because it wasn't good or beneficial to Trump or whoever was going to be the candidate. They didn't want to give Biden that victory. It was Biden at the time. That's the state of our political scene right now. And so when I think of, to me, the greatest independent candidate was Ross Perot, in my lifetime anyhow. Self-funded, outspoken, track record of success, didn't bite his tongue, was thoughtful in his approach to things. They made it to where he couldn't get it done. And he was multi-billionaire. He couldn't get it done. So when I see the Mark Cubans of the world that are now going to campaign for Kamala for 3 days, I wish it was Mark Cuban running because I'd probably vote for him. It'd be a clearer vote for me than it is right now, right? And so interesting times. Anyhow, whoever your horse is, I have no horse in the race. I hope we all, like Chapel Roan said a couple of weeks back, I hope we all get more from both sides because damn do we deserve it, man.
I still don't know who that is, but anyway, You mentioned Ross Perot. That's who you're talking about, right?
Absolutely.
Making inroads, right? That was the last third-party candidate that there is a they, right?
Yeah.
That they allowed on the presidential debate stage.
Yeah.
You'll remember that. There was 3 people on the debate stage in those campaigns in the early 90s. And what happened since then is they consolidated power, right? So that the presidential debate forum is co-owned by the RNC and the DNC, and they colluded to keep third-party candidates out, right? Since the early 90s. And what you got this year was one debate. You didn't even get multiple opportunities to vet your horses, right? Like, it's total bullshit, man. And it's totally controlled by both sides at multiple levels, right? And so, again, why I'm disenfranchised and why I don't pay as much of attention, because one, a lot of the policies that they enact aren't to benefit me. And I just end up having to pay for them, right? So I'm completely jaded with the system. You just got your tax bill this week. I just got mine. Like, I'm not some sovereign citizen Ruby Ridge guy, but I do contemplate sometimes, like, what if I just don't send my check, man? Like, nobody asked me if I wanted to bomb Yemen this week, right? Like, nobody was like, hey, Nick, like, what should we allocate your tax dollars to? And so they just tell me that I have to pay my fair share. And in fact, now you got me in a little bit of a ranty mood.
Good.
There's the 7% capital gains tax here in Washington State that's new. So if you sell more than $250,000 in long-term capital gains, you got to pay 7% to the governor. That passed
and that's on top of the 20% on the capital gains, right?
Well, that's on top of the federal. Yeah, that's a state tax,
Right.
right? Yeah. So in a state where the Constitution says you're not allowed to have an income tax. So they passed this and went all the way to the Washington Supreme Court last year or 2 years ago. And they ended up ruling, just total semantic government bullshit, that it was an excise tax and not an income tax, right? Like, fuck you. And so that tax is on the ballot this fall. You can vote to repeal it, right? Because it's an unconstitutional tax. I doubt it's going to go through. I don't think it's going to go through. But you get to read, like, in your little voters pamphlet. I don't have it on my desk, but you get to read, like, somebody wrote a letter for and someone writes a letter after, or opposed to repealing the tax. And in the opposal, and I've been saying this all week to my wife, you're going to hear me say it a lot more. If you rebuff this tax, if you're in favor of repealing this tax, you're a Wall Street tycoon who doesn't want to give up your easy-gotten gains to pay your fair share, right?
Easy-gotten gains.
So all week I've been telling my wife, you better watch your step, girl. You're dealing with a Wall Street tycoon here. I mean, like, am I a Wall Street tycoon? Like, I was tweeting about this weekend. Like, I went duck hunting with my son. I cleaned out my beer fridge. Like, Wall Street tycoon, man. Like, I'm a Wall Street tycoon. It's fucking bullshit. And that's like the partisan messaging, right? Like, I would say that person or those people that want those increased taxes in a state where it's against the Constitution, right? They think that it's like, they want to go towards socialism, right? They think that the rich are obviously rich or all super wealthy, right? We're all billionaires and something like that. It can't be that we're just like above that threshold, right? Like just slightly above it, and we actually do have to budget. And then the other thing that sticks in my craw is the other taxes that are on the ballot, right? Because at the same time, they want to increase the sales tax here locally to pay for the crime that the mayor says is perceived, right? Like, what is going on? So you need more money for, like,
perceived crime.
Right. Exactly. So, and then the other thing is I read the for and against for those taxes, right? And it's like, well, if you don't pass this tax, we're going to have to, like, cancel other services or take money from other places. And I'm reading it and I'm like, yeah, that's fucking how a budget works, man. Like if I look at my thing at the end of the month and it's like, oh, I don't have enough money, I can't write a letter to somebody and say, please, could you allocate a little bit more to me so I can cover my bills because I don't want to cut out my cable or my internet or whatever it is, right? And that's sort of what a certain cadre of politicians and certainly a certain cadre of the country thinks, right? Like, I forget what the hashtag is on Twitter, but, there's a whole group on Twitter that just asks for money for stuff. Like, hey, I need $37 for dinner tonight. Can someone Venmo me $37? Or I'm $87 short on when?
I can't look. I'm a sucker for that stuff, Nick. I'd be like, oh my God, they don't have money for dinner. Fuck, Venmo.
Right. But no, see, I'm the opposite.
I know.
So I'm not sure where I was going with that, but all that to say, I'm really, and I think a lot of people are disenfranchised with the system. I think a lot of people are going to vote with their pocketbook. I voted straight down the tax ticket with my pocketbook, and so I don't know. That's sort of just where I am on the ranty side of things. I'm not really following the presidential race. I don't think that either of them are in it for me or the country, frankly. And so, again, for the third or fourth week in a row, I'll be here in my cabin and just watching the world burn.
Imagine a candidate that ran on a platform that called for campaign reform, congressional term limits, balancing the federal budget, overhauling the healthcare and income tax systems, and placing restrictions on lobbying. That was fucking Ross Perot. And that is why the two parties decided we can never allow a smart, rich motherfucker with, the capital to take us on to get on national television and tell the rest of America that all of this is possible. You can't let the average American, Jose Maria, Joe, and Mary, see behind the curtain, folks. And so again, I remind you as this election gets closer to closing up and wrapping up, just be kind to each other and find more in common than you do differences, and try to be civil about the differences. It's not worth it. It's probably going to be messy regardless of who wins. But try to keep that in mind. These people don't really care about us. At the end of the day, if I do decide to vote on the presidential candidate, it's going to be more about, who can hurt me less, or who can hurt the issues I care about less, right? And so, sad state of affairs, that it has to be that way.
You're going to get a rate cut 2 days later, so look forward to that.
Yeah, there is that. And yeah, let's get to the markets. Look, there's a lot going on, right? Everything is awesome. Mr. Trump wants to keep telling us that under Kamala presidency, the stock market is going to implode and we're going to have a 1929 style crash. But you go, girl, because every week you keep delivering new all-time highs. So let's talk about the overall indices, Nick. It's been an interesting week. You can't blame the crash on the politician and also not give him credit. It doesn't go that way. You got to one or the other, right? And obviously,
logic is a thing.
Logic is a thing. But look, interesting week. I've said for a long, long time, and I've always said I didn't know how it played out. I suspected that war and more war would be behind it, but I've said that there would come a time where we saw record high gold prices, record high major indices, and a rising dollar. And sure enough, this week was the first time that I really saw that correlation stick, right? New highs on the major indices, a dollar index that was almost 100 about a month or a month and a half ago, now surging to the 104 level, and you got gold kissing 2,700 and likely to break through it over the next couple of days. Thoughts on the correlation there? Do you think that's going to continue holding up, Nick? Because that, again, I hate to say it. I'm the optimist. I hate to be pessimistic, but that tells me more war and more bombs are coming.
Yeah. So I've been telling you the correlations have been all over the place. They've been, traditional correlations were holding up and then they broke down, and then, gold was trading inverse to the dollar, and then not inverse to rates, and then not inverse to the dollar. And they sort of been going all over the place. That's what I was telling you. The market couldn't figure it out.
Yep.
Still hasn't, I don't think, figured it entirely out. Is obviously still waiting for an election, right? We're starting to see that they're pricing in the Trump win. You saw Druckenmiller, I'm sure, this week on the Bloombergs. You see the bank stocks going up, right? You see the poly market, the betting market, which I just mentioned. And then you got everybody scratching their head, right? We'll talk about uranium in a second, but the Financial Times, right, who I view as sort of the most venerable financial rag, right? I like reading that more than the other ones. I think They have their finger on the pulse. Anyway, Financial Times had a long expose this week about, basically why the fuck is gold at $2,700. Like, we got that the central banks were buying, but now they're not buying. Indian and Chinese demand has softened. It's not the jewelry demand. ETF demand is flat. They sort of went through it all, and the conclusion was sort of like, oh shit, we're in a new paradigm. Where portfolios and portfolio managers are allocating what used to be all the cash on their balance sheets to just cash, or short-term treasuries or money markets or whatever. They're viewing gold now not just as a hedge, but as a store, right? Like as a place to put some of their cash balance in the interim. And obviously there's a lot of cash balance with the amount of liquidity that's in the system, and the stock market at record highs, which you just mentioned. And so, very interesting article from the Financial Times saying that, maybe this time it is different, right? And outside of that, I'm not sure what to tell you. The technicals still look good. You mentioned the dollar's at 103, 104, and gold still looks good. Oh, the other point that Financial Times article was making is that, yeah, like the GDX has started to go up a little bit, and then the producers have started to perform, but not to the level that their margin should be. Like their margin indicates the
Sure.
stock should have gone up, right? Based on that price of gold minus their AISC, right? These stocks should be doing better, and they're doing all right. Don't get me wrong. Like I have readers in GDXJ, and we made money for sure.
Sure.
But they were saying that it's more uniquely a gold thing and not as tied to the equities as it was in sort of past gold runs. So I thought that was interesting. And at this point, I forget what the question was that you asked.
No, look, the question was, do you think the correlation holds up? Do you think, is temporary? Do you think we get more clarity once the election comes to pass? I mean, we're a month away, right?
I think the markets like closure, humans like closure. So I think you will get a more firmer direction after the election. But I think you're getting a pretty good taste of what that direction is, right? I mean, it's higher gold, it's higher stocks. We're in earnings season now. Earnings is okay. And so the last thing I was going to say was about the war and the dollar. So yes, I do think those correlations continue. One, because we're now bombing Middle Eastern countries, which is nothing new for the United States. But like that's good for dollar, right? That shows like you take out your big stick and you beat up a couple of people and you're king of the playground for another couple of whatever it is in geopolitical terms, months or years or decades or whatever, right? So we're doing that. And then on the yield front, yeah, like I said, you're going to get another cut 2 days after the election, November 7th, I believe the meeting is, and it's a 90% probability right now of going to 4.5 from the 4.75 that it's at now. So to me, that means rates lower, gold higher, and that correlation has held up. The worst stuff means the dollar stays strong, and gold can continue to go up. So yeah, I think those do sort of continue. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't help but notice that the Hamas leader has been killed, so I imagine all hostilities now in the Middle East will cease.
And they're asking to get back the hostages now, so we'll see.
The last thing I want to mention as it relates to the overall markets and indices and gold specifically is Chinese stimulus. We told you last week that China is nimble and China is quick, and the upside of having a top-to-bottom economy where you say what to do and then it happens immediately because nobody else really gets a vote on that. The upside to that is they can act quicker than the U.S. and most other countries, and sure enough, they went ahead and just added another $570 or $560 billion of stimulus to its property sector, its real estate sector, which has been struggling. And so again, they're pulling out the guns, right? They're lowering interest rates, not just on new loans, but on existing mortgages. They're providing additional support for unfinished properties to get those closed. And they're stepping in and they're buying Chinese stocks. So if their economy requires all of that intervention, I think that's a prelude to what we're going to see in America. I think America is going to follow in those steps in the sense that it'll be more aggressive in intervening in financial sectors and markets when it's necessary, because we're at the point, I mentioned the debt off the bat, the 35 plus trillion. We're at the point where we're not going to pay it all, folks. It's just a matter of how long it is before we reset this whole thing and it implodes. So in the meantime, they're going to try to prop it up and keep people from getting in the streets and demanding change. And the best way to do that is by just giving people just enough to keep them from coming outside with sticks. But not enough where they, can actually go to a new outside or build a new place to be inside on. So interesting times for sure. We have to talk uranium and we have to talk lithium. Exciting stuff in both. We mentioned when the Microsoft deal was announced that was a huge green light for other companies to be able to go to their boards and say, hey, we need to make sure that we retain our market share. We can't fall behind the curve. We have climate goals that we've committed to. We don't have a path to get there. What's the most sensible path? That, of course, the cleanest, only base load energy in the world, nuclear. And we've been calling this for, it's just what it is, right? For a long, long time. So
tech guys are so smart.
Imagine. So not a coincidence that Amazon has announced that, it's going to take a $500 million stake for in X Energy, right? And the goal of that is to start securing. The first project, I think, is in Washington State, your neck of the woods, and it's in securing.
That's where Amazon is domiciled.
There you go. And so they clearly are committed. Microsoft clearly is committed. Oracle clearly is committed. You can't have a future where you even attempt to meet your climate goals, if you take that seriously, and these corporations clearly do, without nuclear energy. Uranium equity is absolutely ripped all week long. New highs for many companies. Portfolio for JRM is looking healthier this week than it did last week, and it was already pretty damn healthy last week. But look, I got multiple 200%, 300%, 250% winners, 100% winners, all on the heels of what's been clear as day, right? It's been clear as day. You just had to go through waiting out the bottom. That was 2 years ago. Be in position for the first leg up, which was violent to the upside. That was a year ago. Waiting out the consolidation, which consolidation, went from 110 down to like the $70 level or whatever, right? 70, 80. But the juniors specifically, I mean, they were getting treated like it was $35 uranium. And it was boring. And even the most ardent of uranium bugs were impatient because it's so obvious what comes next, right? What comes next is higher prices. But the market didn't reflect it. Well, it's starting to reflect it again now. And this leg up, the uranium train is leaving the station, folks. This leg up is going to be a fun one. It's where companies double their market share. And I'm talking big companies, the UECs of the world. I'll give you a free name there. The Energy Fuels of the world. It's where those companies start going doubling market caps, within a 30-day period. And these are not small, tiny market caps. These aren't penny stocks, These are billion-dollar, multi-billion dollar companies. Yeah. Absolutely. So that's in the uranium space, Nick.
I got a lot of them. You mentioned Energy Fuels. I like that company. I've been following that company for a long time. And you mentioned the consolidation. It's still not back to, I don't even think $2 or $3 within where it was when that, the first leg of the uranium bull run took off in earnest. So you haven't missed it. Everything you say is true. It was always going to be nuclear. Of course, you can't meet your climate goals without it. Of course, there's no other source of stable baseload power. And now we're getting the small modular reactors to a point where, there's multiple companies that you're seeing these tech companies partner with, and you'll see them deployed. So, and it's not just the small modular reactors. The Microsoft deal obviously was for all the power in 3 Mile Island, and that's the site of a nuclear scare in the late 70s, early 1980s. Not too far from where I grew up, actually. That 3 Mile Island sits on the Susquehanna River. And I did much fishing in that river below the Conowingo Dam when I was a young lad. What else about uranium? I'm not sure what I wanted to talk about. So here, I'll just start talking. Everybody's talking about it, right? Like, I turned on the Bloomberg the other day while it was heating up my lunch. I was eating leftovers. Wall Street tycoons eat leftovers, if you didn't know.
You're lucky you don't have slick back hair. They'd really accuse you of some stuff and call you some names.
All they were talking about, and Bloomberg does 60 seconds, 90 seconds. Okay, we got to run. We're on to the next topic. They were sitting there while I heated up my lunch, ate my lunch. It was like 2 guests, and we went through the whole thing, like the future of nuclear, the new green power. Amazon needs nuclear to power the data centers. It's not just the data centers, it's the AI, because they love the AI so much, right? That's why they're talking about it so much, because AI continues to be sort of that theme, right? You've still got Taiwan semi in the news. You've still got NVIDIA in the news talking about insane chip demand. And so if they can tie it to that and run with it, by all means, I love it. Any publicity you can get. And you were saying it's sort of time. Hang on one second. I'm going to grab a book.
We present to you all Nick's book.
Because somebody was tweeting this week. In fact, it was our friend, Rudy Havenstein.
Best follow on Twitter, by the way.
Everything we were just saying. How is it that, a year ago, it's, nuclear is a pariah and there's still the waste issue and, it can't be feasible and this and that. And then you just flip a switch and all of a sudden they're talking about it for 10 minutes during the close on Bloomberg. Like, how is stuff like that possible? Like, how does that come to be? How is it that people can just adopt and adapt an idea and coalesce around it so quickly, right? And it's because, well, before it was just nuclear, but now it's AI. Now you got to power the future with it. Now it's a clean, green technological future, and it's not just pellets or ingots of uranium in a rod generating the power that you got to deal with afterward, right? So the psychology, and that's what you were saying, is that it's switched now, right?
Yep.
From something that was, yeah, we knew it was bullish and we knew it was good, to something that now everyone knows is good and bullish, even the host of Bloomberg, right? So, and then the next thing I'd say is it's still in sort of that Bloomberg phase, right? Like,
Yep.
They weren't flashing up energy fuels and pick your flavor, whatever it is, right? Like, there was no juniors on Bloomberg. They were talking about Cameco. They were talking about, they love the big board listed ones, right? They were talking about the SMR companies, the NuScales, the Oklos. And it's the same thing, right? Like, build all, fine, like, great. I love the publicity. Those stocks are good. I've owned some of those at some points. They still haven't started talking about what goes inside even the small modular nuclear reactors, and that's uranium, Gerardo. So right now it's a nuclear bull market.
Yeah.
The ETF is called like the Nuclear Energy ETF, and it holds some of those bigger companies that I mentioned. But at the end of the day, this is a uranium thing. Nuclear technology is not scarce. We know how to build light water reactors. We know how to build small modular reactors. What we don't know how to do is get enough uranium out of the ground to power them in an efficient and cost-effective manner. And that's why the price of uranium goes up. And I believe that's where the true money is going to be made in this run, because no matter if it's Amazon or Meta or Google or NuScale or Oklo, there's still only one single element that goes into all those things, and that's the U.
Easy trend, guys and gals. The trend is your friend. Uranium demand skyrocketing, uranium supply getting cut. And, we've had more earnings calls where big-time uranium producers are calling for, double-digit decreases on the production they anticipated. It's a perfect storm right now in the uranium space with a ton of opportunity, guys and gals.
And Kazakhstan, which is the world's sort of piggy bank for uranium, is like, you know what? We're just going to sell to these Eastern guys who you Western folks don't like too much. So
yeah,
so you got that whole geopolitical situation with uranium as well, and Russia, et cetera. So yeah, a lot of stuff to like there.
A lot of stuff to like. And you know what? I know that the lithium sector has been an absolute pain in the ass for those of us that have large holdings of companies like Patriot Battery Metals, where you know the true worth of what that company's asset is. And you know that in a better market, which is coming, and we'll talk about that in a second, you know that that is a many billion-dollar asset that will either get put into production and have a Pilbara-like run, which is, double-digit billions once it's up and running, or it will be taken out for billions of dollars, right? It certainly won't be anywhere near today's price levels. The frustrating part is you could know all that, and the fucking stock is still in the $4 range, right? And then the bottom line is, look, I'm not any happier about it than anyone else is. It would help, and I say this kindly to the fine folks at Patriot. It would help, and I have all the faith in the world that Ken and the team are probably working on something big behind the scenes where they need to be quiet. But it's been over a month since we got any kind of material update, from the company. And with the amount of rigs that were turning, with the camp that was built out, with assays that have to be trickling in, I have to believe there's something bigger going on behind the scenes that has forced a quiet period on the company. I hope I'm right, because companies are starting to spend, and it's not just in the uranium space, folks. General Motors has decided it was going to go ahead and throw another $650 million US to become an equity partner with Lithium Americas. Now, General Motors' commitment is now really, it's right at $1 billion US to advance this. And let me read their justification. I've been saying it. Little Gerardo Del Real in his Round Rock, Texas, Austin, Georgetown office. Just talk.
Nobody could have known. They call you a nobody.
Fucking right. Who knew? I still have to remind my friends, you got in at Patriot at 16 cents. Stock is at $4. You own a boat ton of it. Sit tight. Let it go back to double digits. It's coming. I've seen these cycles 100 different times. But anyhow, let me read to you GM's CEO's takeaway of the investment and what it sees for the future of lithium. We don't want to become a mining company, he says. Our main goal is to build out a North American-based, Western-allied, reliant supply chain. Let me repeat that. The main goal is to build out a North American-based, Western allied, reliant supply chain. To do that, we have to pick partners and assets and figure out what they need to do to industrialize and be successful.
Can I translate?
Absolutely.
We don't trust the Chinese.
And we got the money to prove it. And this is what I've said to subscribers of the paid service for the past year while we watch the lithium price head fake us. This is the third head fake now where we think it's a bottom, and now we'll see if it's a bottom here in the next week or two. But the price sure is acting like it wants to bottom again, and it looks that way and it feels that way by the amount of despair in the sector. But the other thing that Morrison said, the General Motors gentleman said, we are working with several potential partners and looking at other assets in the continent. Much like Microsoft, everyone, GM is not going to be the only automaker that is at the table securing 20-year supply, lithium supply, secure supply in North America at a premium. It's not going to be the last company that does that. There's going to be many other companies that are going to do it. That bodes very well for the patriots of the world, for the companies that are making discoveries of large-scale assets with good infrastructure and cheap hydropower in North America. The Inflation Reduction Act, the comically named, I always say it, but it has some really good incentives. That's the other thing that GM was keen on. They pointed out, we want to absolutely capture some of those tax incentives that will allow us to expedite a North American supply chain. So believe the unbelievable, as the late great Mr. Dines would say, but North America will have an independent battery supply chain in the not too distant future. And when you start getting checks written for billions of dollars for equity investments into those companies, those are significant investments that tell you this company is not going to fail. And interestingly enough, look, the deposit itself, well, most people love either brine or spodumene. It's coming from clays, and it's coming with a technology that hasn't yet been proven on a massive scale. I happen to believe in it, but I'm no scientist, and it hasn't been proven to be commercial on a large scale. So a heck of an endorsement for Lithium Americas. Congratulations to the company. Congratulations to GM for leading the way and writing, $1 billion in checks and coming in and saying, no, we're going to leave the mining to the mining people. What we're going to do is give you all the financial resources that you need to make that operation successful, because what we see for lithium is much higher prices, and what we see for North American lithium is prices even higher than that, right? We're not going to play the Chinese game anymore. So kudos on all fronts. I look forward to the day where, we're looking at Patriot in double digits again and talking about how it could still be a stock that gets bought out for $30 to $40. And I know it seems like, again, believe the unbelievable, right? It seems like so far away. That was just a year and a half or so ago, folks. It happens quick. And so hang in there. If you haven't yet bought a company like Patriot Battery Metals and you want exposure to one of the highest quality North American assets out there, period, at a fucking discount, you should go do some research and due diligence on Patriot Battery Metals. Hey, if you bought it at 12, 15, 16, or 17, because I was enthusiastic a year ago, do the same thing I told you to do a year ago. Hold it until it gets bought out or goes into production. That was always the thesis. Still the way it's going to play out, folks. Any thoughts on lithium?
No.
No.
I was going to have some smart alecky stuff, but no, look, it's not going anywhere. And we talked last week about Rio Tinto and Arcadium, a $6.7 billion deal. I feel well positioned. I was obviously in Patriot. I guess I was just going to ladle on two things. One, they put out their first PEA a couple of weeks ago or a month ago at this point. I forget when that was. That's a real deposit, right, Gerardo? I mean, we've known this for a long time, but when the second phase gets built out, that would be, according to the first PEA, like the fourth largest lithium mine in the world, right? Like, we didn't find a little lithium deposit. Like that's a real thing. I guess three things. Another thing is the 16 cents originally was a private placement. It's worth mentioning that. Yeah. We've got in these things at the lowest prices with the most amount of leverage, that is warrants, via private placements, whether that's Patriot or some other lithium wins that we've had, or even uranium wins that we've had. They come because we were able to get in very early stage.
Yep.
And then we had the patience to wait. And potentially had warrants to exercise more, right? To buy more with no risk when the shares went up. I continue to say that that's our bread and butter. I continue to say that's one of the main ways that I make my wealth. I know because I just filed my taxes and I looked where the AGI came from. And so it's also one of the main ways I pay those taxes, and I paid life's big expenses, right? Tuitions, the taxes. I told you my wife got a new car the other day. Like that's private placement money, right? So if you're in a position to do that, if you don't know if you're in a position to do that, call us and ask, and let's talk about how we can get you in private placements. You know, we had a gentleman in a Midwest state the other day that advises other people on behalf of what to do, and he ended up taking a subscription to all of our services and then wrote a check into a uranium private placement deal that we're doing. So we have deals available. There's more coming up, as we were just talking about. Lithium's coming back, uranium's coming back, commodities in general are coming back. We'll have more private placements before the end of the year. And then the third point was, because I said three things, is, you know, those lithium gains came despite all the. I'm taking it back to the partisan politics now, right? Because, you know, I have friends that think that, you know, lithium's never going to work, right? Battery cars are a hoax, or they're never going to be adopted. And I like having those conversations. I enjoy asking them, why do you think that? Sure. What are the barriers? Like, why would you not buy one, et cetera, et cetera? And then, you know, I just like telling somebody, do you know that we were early investors in a mine that could be the fourth largest lithium mine in the world? And it's like, this is real things is what I was going to say. It's not like lithium, EVs are never going to work. It's like, we're not, like, that's not what we are. That's not where I am as a person, as an individual. Like, I'm into like writing checks into deals, right? I'm not debating the merits of whether or not electric vehicles are going to be adopted. Like, that's not what this is about. This is about like real deals with real companies, with real people. And so, sorry, I'm talking a little bit now.
This is what I asked.
You know, we're in the age of the internet, and we're in the age of fakeness, right? That's really what this is about, is fakeness. Because I'm starting, and I've done presentations about fakeness for sure. From Kim Kardashian.
One of my favorite slides, the Kardashian girls. Hey, no hate there, by the way. I
might have to, so, especially on the internet, right? And now I'm thinking of Instagram and, you know, just the perfectly manicured everything, perfectly manicured hands, toes, kitchen, family, life, whatever it is, right? Like, that's the presentation you get on the internet. And so it's hard sometimes to cut through the noise because there is so much curated shit out there. And this harkens back to sort of like the influencer days of COVID, right? Like, you don't really know what that person is or what they're doing or what the rest of their life is like once the camera gets shut off. It's really super highly curated, right? Whereas, you know, Gerardo and I are sitting in our home offices. We don't have designers. We don't have makeup people. We don't have people that tell us what to wear. We don't have lighting people. And yet, we wrote checks in one of the earliest rounds to what is now slated to become the fourth largest lithium mine in the world. Like, this is real stuff. And so when we say this could be the biggest copper deposit or this could be the best thing, it's like, yeah, because it could be, man. It's not a fucking app, or it's not a fucking organizational thing for your closet that some influencer is peddling on Instagram, man. Like, these are checks that people are writing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in checks into, and waiting years and playing the warrant game, et cetera. And maybe that's over the top of a lot of people's heads, or maybe that's not what our subscribers are interested in, but that's what we do. And it's real. And I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know how to better articulate that. Maybe I need to put on my fucking monkey suit and people would say, oh, that guy is a Wall Street tycoon.
There's a reason why we go hiking in the jungle in South America for 10 hours, folks. And that isn't, you know, just to go kick rocks and go hang out with geologists and, you know, take a trip. Those are 20-hour days where we're literally vetting local stakeholders. We're vetting the communities, we're vetting the geologists, we're vetting the properties, we're looking at infrastructure, we're planning ahead and looking at potential challenges, whether it's on the permitting front, whether it's on the infrastructure front. We're asking the questions ahead of time to help inform the amount of dollars that check is going to be written, and to help inform the enthusiasm with which we bring you those ideas. And so, you know, I always say there's core positions that Most work out. Most work out well. Some take longer than you want them to take, but most do very, very well. And then there's the lottery tickets, the very, low end, tiny market cap. If they hit, it's 100 bagger or a 50 bagger. If they miss, probably losing 80 to 90% of your capital. And you just have to know which is which. That's our job. And I agree with Nick. I think the service that we do that best in is private intel, right? Private placement intel. I absolutely believe that if you are an accredited investor and you're dealing with anything above $15,000 of capital that you're allocating to the market and you're accredited, that service should absolutely be a staple in your subscription letter service because it is excellent. We have a couple of deals before the end of the year that we're working on now that I think, are going to be, again, I hate to keep saying it, but Patriot-like, right? That have Patriot-like potential. We have one that we just financed a couple of months ago that I've said I think has even more potential if everything plays out the way I think it should play out. And so, no, a lot to be excited about, folks. We got record high gold prices. We have silver yet to break out with a lot of opportunity in the silver space. We have a copper price that's, firmly in the 420 to 430 level, looking to put a new floor there and then shoot back to 5 and then make new record highs. We have uranium prices starting to move. All the indicators there are that it's go time for uranium again. And we have clumsy-ass lithium trying to find its bottom. It'll find its footing. It got a little drunk. It got a little too excited for its own good. It's had a hangover for about a year or so. I think it's almost recovery time, and that recovery will do very, very well for those of you that have stuck it out. And look, thankfully we've been able to deliver some winners in the meantime, despite that pullback, right? We financed Q2, 25 cents, less than 2 months ago. To $1.25, hit $1.40 here about a week or so ago. That stock's going higher. So if we can keep delivering, 400 or 500% wins in a bear lithium market within a couple of month time frame, and that's not worth your $4,000 or $5,000 a year, then we don't know what to tell you. I certainly don't know how to better articulate that for you. Again, these are real checks that we're writing for real companies and doing real vetting and doing real work to get those to you.
And not just new deals coming and not just have been able to deliver wins inside of what's been a tough resource space, but have companies coming public very soon too. Like I found myself eagerly checking the CDAR website, recently to see like when are we going to get these listings, right? There's a couple of ones. There's a Pure Silver one that I'm really interested in IPO-ing. Pure Silver plays are tough to come by. And there's a gold copper one in the U.S. in a really sort of interesting jurisdiction that's coming to list here soon. So will be good to not just get that liquidity, but to have these companies coming to list at a time when there's interest in those sort of commodities on the junior end of the spectrum. So excited about that for sure. Then last thing, because I'll forget, is Bitcoin is also a commodity, and you have to notice that that's gone to $67,000. Just in the past couple of weeks here. That's a multi-month high. It was below $60,000 of late. I dabble a little bit in foundational profits. We have some ETFs there, but really Chris Curl would be the guy over at Crypto Cycle. We haven't shown him a lot of love because, things are cyclical. And, I was telling him, dude, when Bitcoin's 100K, people are going to come running to Crypto Cycle, right? And it would behoove you to check that out before then, right? If you want to be ahead of the herd, for the third Dines reference of the podcast, to get in those sort of names now, like we were in uranium ahead of the run and in lithium ahead of the run, because that is a liquidity-based asset. We were talking about liquidity. We were talking about stimulus, specifically Chinese stimulus. For me, that's why Bitcoin is back at $67,000. You do have an election. You have a Trumpster who has been seemingly more supportive, or at least accepting of the sort of the crypto space. And so anyway, and the last thing is we're starting to do trials of that service. So people were saying they weren't familiar with the crypto space or whatever. So we have lots of tutorial videos there you can check out on a trial basis. And we're a small company. So that's the last thing I should say here is we have one gentleman who answers the phone. His name is Jimmy. You can call him up, 844-337-3400. Did I get it right?
Tell them Nick and G sent you.
Yeah, exactly. 844-334-4700. And he'll work with you on pricing or bundles, or explain to you what private placements are, et cetera. But I just wanted to mention the Bitcoin because you were talking about commodities, and I wanted to say that it was at 67,000. And he's got our money higher than it was when we gave it to him. So he's managing that in the right direction as well.
And again, money where our mouth is, folks. We're not perfect. There's gonna be losses. There's gonna be winners. Like the goal is that the core positions, the big checks, make all of a lot more than the small gambling, speculative positions that mostly don't work out. But we do put our money where our mouth is. I mean, we gave Mr. Curl $50,000 of our own capital to go and speculate in crypto, and he's done a brilliant job with it. The service is top notch. I still do not dabble in the crypto space and try to stick to my knitting. The couple of times where I dabbled outside of it, it doesn't work. So I stick to my knitting, but even I can read through that and understand everything the way it's presented. There's not just, articles and editorials and tutorials, but there's videos. If you're more of a video person, I had this conversation with a young lady a couple of weeks ago. She said, hey, well, thank you for comping me the service, but I don't like sitting down and reading a lot because she was, in fairness, she's dyslexic. And I said, no, get in there. There's tons of videos. She's like, oh, really? And she loves the videos. So no, for Mr. Curl, for Mr. Hodge, myself, Ryan, John, Carl, Mr. Mike Fagan, for, the talented group of editors, thoughts and opinions, rantings and ravings, you can go to dailyprofitcycle.com/subscribe. There's also a list to the paid publications there. If you're curious, you can go to digestpublishing.com. And then, of course, the freebie for everybody, aside from dailyprofitcycle.com, resourcestockdigest.com, where sponsored companies cut us a check to provide content that we vet before we accept them as clients, but stories that we think have the potential to actually make you some money. So that's the list and the rundown of services that we provide. Anything else you want to touch on, Mr. Hodge?
No, I don't think so. That's pretty good as far as the time is concerned, and we knocked out a bunch of topics. So I look forward to doing it again next week, and that was another fun one.
I like it. I am Gerardo Del Real, along with Mr. Nick Hodge. This was the 289th episode of our weekly therapy session we like to call Investing in Bizarro World. Jason, hit the music.
Shit.
Hey there, you independent-minded investor. If you like this video, make sure to tell us so by clicking the like button below. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss another one. And share it with everyone you know on social media. You can also click the link in the description below to check out more information-packed videos just like this one. Thanks for watching.